Hey everyone, welcome to part 4 of my Sequelize tutorial series, where now we're going to be querying our database. So Sequelize has a lot of methods to assist you with querying your database. In other words, Sequelize provides a lot of ways to get data from your database. So in the last video, we have added to our database using build, save, create, and bulk create, and these mirrored insert statements. And now we're going to use a function to select data from the database, or mirror the select statement. And this is done with the method FindAll. So let me first clean this up in here. I'll still leave this working with our updated table, just if you can remember from the previous video. But so the way to do this is we would run user.findAll. And let's see what this returns. Or actually, we need to return this. And then, because we're returning a promise, let's handle this to keep our promise chain going. And have our data right here. However, similar to our bulk create, this is going to return an array of records for each our table. So if we want to outprint what we get from FindAll, we need to loop through this array and then print each element. So let's do what we did in the last video. We're going to do data.forEach. And then for each element of this array, let's log it. So we're going to do element. And then, if you can remember also from the previous video, to get only the information we really want to see right now, to JSON. So let's do user.findAll, and let's see what this returns. And what you can see is we have returned every user from our database. So you can see we have every single one, user ID, 2, 3, all the way down to 1. And if you can see, we have select, user ID, username, password, age from user as user. Ignore this as user part right now, but just know that this is the same as saying select all from our database. So if we ran the same thing in here, select all from user, select everything from our table, you can see we have everyone in here, which is everyone that is put out in here. And so of course we can also specify certain attributes that we want. For example, if we only wanted the username and password columns to be returned, we can do that by passing the key in here called attributes. And so then we pass the array of the columns that we actually want the information from. And we want username and password. So we just want to retrieve those. Now let's run this again. And you can see we just get every user's username and password printed out like this. And something we can also do, or let me show you these statements. We have select username, password from user. What we can also do is make an alias for these names. So say we want to change the username to my name and password to pwd. We can do the following. So we would pass in a nested array. So let me add another one here. And then we have our first array here and our second array here. So this is our nested array. And say we want to return username as my name and password as pwd. So let's see what we get. You can see we have my name now in pwd. So we have select username as my name, password is pwd from user. So the as is what makes it an alias, and that is how we are specifying it in here. And then another cool thing we can do with Sequelize is aggregations, and this can be done with the Sequelize.fn function. And Sequelize.fn is a function that is used to run an SQL function. So fn stands for function. So first let me get rid of this in here. Actually though, we need to keep our attributes. And what we're going to pass in is the array again, and then we're going to pass in Sequelize.fn. And so of course this method takes arguments, and the first is a string of the function that we actually want to call. For example, we could do a sum on the age column. So in other words, we want to add up every value in our age column. So we can do that with quotations, pass as a string, and then sum. And then the second argument is the column that we want to perform this operation on. However, this column is accessed this time by the Sequelize.call function. So we would do Sequelize.col and then pass in the name of the column, which is age. And then of course, similar to the way we did last time, we can give this an alias. So in this case, we'll give it the alias, let's say, how old. And then let's save this, and let's run it and see what we get. Oh, we got an error. Unknown column, how old. And I believe this is because we didn't pass it as a nested array. So let's do this. Let's try running this again. And now you can see we get how old as the age of 653. Because when we had this as a single array, what it was technically doing was it was looking for this as a column and then this as a column. It wasn't actually setting this as an alias, and that's why it said, I believe it was unknown column how old. So make sure this is a nested array like this. And then let me just show you, of course, we can then take an average on this column. So let's do, we just switch that to AVG, and the average age is 26.12. And then, of course, because we can choose to select certain attributes, we can also exclude certain ones. So we have, say we want to get everything. It's still the attributes key. Say we want to retrieve everything except for the user's password. So we use the key exclude within the key attributes, and then we pass an array of what we want to exclude, and here it is the password. So let's retrieve everything except for the password. And so now you can see we get everything listed down here, user ID 1 through 26, with everything except for the password. And if we look at the SQL statement, we can see in here, select everything here, and password isn't listed. And now also a very common thing to add to select clauses is the where clause. So where is used to filter the query based off a specific condition. For example, say we want to select every username where the age is 25. Well, we can specify a where clause in FindAll with the key where. So let's get rid of this and then pass in where. Of course, I believe I didn't finish the object. And then we pass into this is another object, and let's say we want every username where the age is 5. So we want to select select everything where the age is 45. So let's run this. You can see we get, I believe, just one. We only have age to be 45 at one spot. But now I believe I said we want to just specify, we just want to get the username. So let's wrap this object in another, and we pass in attributes, and then let's pass in an array of the attributes we want, and we just want username, and then we don't believe we actually don't need this here. Then we just get rid of one more of these, and now let's see what happens. You can see now we just get username of Whitco. So this is saying select username, because we just specified the attribute to be username, as user where the user.age is 45. And these can get pretty complicated. If they get too complicated, I would recommend just looking them up online. Usually they're on GitHub for your specific query, or at least one similar to it. But I'm just going to go over some in here. And then, of course, you can specify multiple where clauses. So say we want, okay, that's still fine. Say we want where age is 45, but we also want where the username is equal to soccer. What did I do? Okay, comma here, because I believe we made a few usernames equal to soccer. Oh, well, we didn't actually have any of those. But say, I think the default age is 21. Might have a few of those. Let's set that. Man, none of those either. So let's go in here and see what they are. So soccer 25. So let's do where age is 25. Hopefully this will return one. And there you can see we got this one here where soccer and the age is 25. And then another keyword in SQL is limit. And what this does is set a limit on how many elements are returned, updated, deleted, or just anything. And to use this with Sequelize, we pass the keyword limit to the FindAll object. So let's say we have FindAll. Let's just say we want to select everything, but only 2 of them. So let's say we only want to return 2 entries in the table. So of course we're going to return the first 2, user ID 1 and user ID 2. So this will just return 2 rows from our table. And now we're going to be talking about ordering and grouping. So in select statements in SQL, you can use the keywords order by and group by. And order by is used to sort the results in ascending and or descending order. And group by is used to group rows that have the same values into basically summary rows. And you can use these keywords in Sequelize as options. For example, let's order our results by the age. We can do this by using the key order. So we have limit right now. Let's change this to order. And then we pass it an array with another array that takes 2 values. So let's pass it a nested array. And the first is the column to order by. So we want to, of course, order by age. And then the second is the direction. So descending or ascending. And we want to say descending. So now let's run this and see what we get. So you can see we have all the ages listed out here from in a descending order. So the highest or the oldest person will be listed first, which I believe was 31. And then at the youngest, we have 21. And then, of course, if we change this to ascending, it'll be the other way around. And that's just ASC. And now we have the oldest actually is 45 and then 31. So it starts at the top at 21, or the youngest, and goes down to the oldest, which is 45. And so there are other ways to order your results, but you can find those in the documentation. But now let's work on grouping. And so grouping works in a very similar way, except it doesn't take a direction as the last argument in the array. In other words, there is no ascending, descending, and etc. But what you do pass is a string directly to the group key. So let's change this and just pass a group key like this. But of course, if you know from SQL, grouping is usually done with aggregate functions. So let's make a more complicated query. Let's select the username and the sum of every age and group it by the username. In other words, for each username that is the same, let's add up all their ages. And so to do this, what we want, because we only want to get the attributes, or because we only want to retrieve the username and that, what we can specify first is username, or not username, is attributes. And then the attributes we want, the first one is username. And then the second one, if you remember, if we want to do an aggregate function, is we got to use the Sequelize.fn function. But also, we're going to give this an alias. So let's make another array. So you can already see these can get kind of complicated. But just hang along with me, and we get Sequelize.fn, and we want to sum this. So let's sum it. And then if you remember, the second argument is the column. And we want to, the column we want to perform this on, of course, is age. And then let's pass the alias. And let's just call it sum age. And then with our handy group key here is saying we want to group this. So pass a comma in here. And we want to group this. Let me get rid of this. And group this by username. So it'll make more sense when you see this outputted, but let's do that. So we could see the sum of every username that's called Whitcode is 312, everyone called soccer is 25, Tom is 100, and so on. And then you can see, of course, the SQL query, select username, and the sum of age as sum age from user, and then group it by the username. And now we can also add operators to our where clause using Sequelize. And what an operator essentially is like saying where username is soccer and age is 45. The operator here is and. And then another example is where you select all where username is soccer or age is 45. And here the operator is or. And these operators are performed with a keyword OP in Sequelize. And the way we retrieved it, data types up here, is we can also do OP like this, because this is also a direct key in Sequelize. So we can use object deconstruction. So for example, let's say we want to select all users from a table where their username is soccer or their age is 45. So let's go down here. Let's get rid of all this. So we just have our FindAll. And because we want to specify a where clause, we'll pass one in. And the first thing we want to do is this is where we're going to use our operator. And this is going to be op.or, because we want to say select all where the username is soccer or their age is 45. And what we do is you pass that in as an array, and then we want username to be soccer, and we want age to be 45. So now let's save this and let's run it and see what we get. And we get this here where the username, you can see here is soccer, and here username is Whitcode, but the age is 45. And so we have select all this where user.username, which means the username column in the table user equals soccer, or the age column in the user table is equal to 45. And also, as a side note, we were actually using this technically in our where operations earlier. It's just applied internally, so we don't need to specify it. So this is essentially the same as saying op.and when we just say where username is soccer and age is 45. So let me show you this. We don't have any, but you can see it says where username is soccer and age is 45. If I got rid of this and just had, these get really complicated when there's a lot of nesting involved, But if I just run this, you can see it's the same thing. So where username equals soccer and user age equals 45. And now another operator we could do is number comparison. For example, say we want to select every data entry where their age is greater than 25. So I always like to just restart from this fresh. But so, of course, we want to do a where clause. And then what we want to get from the where clause is the age. And this is when we pass in our operation, which for us will be greater than. So let's do OP, and to do that is GT. So you might notice that we usually wrap these in an array, and then we pass this as 25. So this is saying let's find all users where their age is greater than 25. So let's click this, and you can see we get age 31, 31, 31, 27, and 45. So those are all our ages that are greater than 25. And if I show you the statement, you can see where user.age is greater than 25 right here. And then, believe it or not, but we can also make even more complex queries. So we can have nested logical comparisons. So this is essentially logical comparison, meaning greater than, less than, basically just comparing things. So let's say we want to select everything where the age is less than 45 or equal to null. Well, of course, we still have our where clause set up, and we're still setting a where clause on the age, but what we need to do now is our actual main element will not be greater than, but it will be .or, because we're specifying where the age is less than 45 or equal to null. And then, remember, we have to pass it as an array. We'll do op dot less than, which is LT, and less than 45. This is an object, so we can do comma separated, and then or it's equal, which is op.eq, to null. So let's run this. I don't believe we actually have any null ages, but let me at least just show you how this query works. So if we go up to the top, we have a lot of ages that are less than 45 apparently, and it says where user.age is less than 45 or user.age is null. Now you may have thought that we can't make more complicated queries than this, but you are of course wrong. We can also use functions in our where clause, similar to what we do with our select statements. So for example, what if we want to only select data records where the length of the username is 6 characters long, like the word soccer? Well, we can use our handy-dandy Sequelize.fn function to call the SQL function char_length and use it in our where clause. So now, let's just set this up. So delete it up to where right here. And what we actually have to use for this is a function, let me just put it in here so it's easier to see, called Sequelize.where. And this is basically a function so that you can use Sequelize.fn inside of. So we couldn't just do where and then just do like Sequelize.fn. We have to use this Sequelize.where if we're going to be doing that. But so of course what we want to do is then we want to choose where the char length, which basically means how many characters, and then of course we have to pass into Sequelize.function is the column by using Sequelize.column, and we are doing that with username, and we want to get them where the length is less than 6, which will be our third argument here. I believe we forgot our comma, so space like this. Now let's save that, and let's log what we get. So node.js, I believe we got an error, unknown column user. What did I do in here? Oh, I didn't pass this incorrectly, so username. There we go. So this is every username that is equal to 6. So we have soccer, and I believe that's the only one. So we only have one username that's equal to the length 6. And now, of course, you can even combine this with the operations that we used earlier to make these queries as complicated as you want. But you can relax now because this is as far as we're going to go with complexity, at least for today. However, the next query that we're going to be working with is an update query. And to do this, we use the update method. Also know that this update query also accepts a where option. And the actual syntax for an update clause is update table, and then the name of the table, and set the column equal to something where something. So for example, let's update our username to pizza wherever the age is 45. I think we only had one of those, but so let's delete this. And of course, we're updating, so let's change this to the update method. What we want to actually update, let me actually just start this over from here. And so what we specify is first, what do we want to update? And we want to update the username, and we want to set it to pizza. And then next is where we want to do this. And so where we want to do this is where the age is 25. So let's save this. Let's run it. We got an error. What is this here? Element.toJSON is not a function. And so that is because of the returned element. So the returned data from this promise. So let's just log the data and see what we have inside. And so what this returns is an array containing the number of affected rows. So you can see we have 14 rows that were affected when we set the username to pizza and the age 25. If you're using Postgres, it actually returns also the rows that were affected. So not just the number of rows that were affected, but actually the rows that were. But in this series, we're using MySQL. And so we just returned how many rows were affected. And in this case, 14 were. And of course, we can also do updates with our operations that we learned earlier. So let's change the username to yes, wherever the age is greater than 1. So let's go back. Let me just start this from fresh. And so what we want to update first is our username. Let's set it to yes with an exclamation mark. And we want to do this where the age is greater than, so remember we do this as an array. Let's do op.gt is greater than 1. So let's run this. You can see we get 25. So there were 25 rows that were updated. And now the final query that we're going to be going over is delete queries, which remove rows from our table. And to do this, we use the Sequelize method destroy. So where does this end here? Don't do that. We want to return this, and instead of update, it is destroy. And then once again, this query can accept where clauses. And you're probably used to this by now. Pass an object with the key where, and we want to delete them where we just changed a lot of stuff to the username yes. So let's do that. Let's delete every name where the user is yes. So save this. And you can see it deleted 25, which is the number of rows that were deleted. And this time you can see that it actually wasn't wrapped in an array. And then we can also pass this function the key truncate and set it to true. So if we do, in our object here, truncate, set that to true, this will delete every record in our table. So get rid of this where actually, and we just have truncate set to true. This would delete every row or every record in our table. And also just keep in mind that truncate deletes every record in the table, but it doesn't delete the table itself. And then lastly, I just want to show you some utility methods that Sequelize has. And a utility method is essentially a method that is used to perform some simple mathematical operation, such as sum, finding the max of something, and things like that. So let's return user.max, and then we just pass in the column. So we're going to return where the max age is. And the max age here is not a number. So let's go in here and let's see. Oh, I actually made the mistake of running the destroy method, so I actually deleted everything from our table. But let's just create a couple users real quick. Let's do username, wit code, or we have that restraint as well. So we can only be between 4 and 6 characters. Let's do password to be 1234. Let's set age to be 25. And let's just leave the rest as default. So let's run this. You can see we inserted that, so hopefully we have something back in our table. Okay, yeah, we have 1 record. And now let's make an older person. So let's change the name to old, and let's set the age to 87. And let's run this. Let's see what we get. Oh, I believe I got an error. Validator length has to be 4 to 6, so let's do oldie with a Y. And insert this. Now we get it in. So now we have 2 records. So I wish I didn't delete all those, but it's what happens, I guess. That's why those methods are kind of dangerous to mess around with. But let's say what we want to do now is we want to get the max age. So we just use the method max. We want to return it. And we'll log the data, and you can see the max age is 87, which is logged down here. And then, of course, like I said, utility functions, we can also do sum. So let's sum up the ages we have as well. So if we do this, you can see we have 112, which is equal to 25 plus 87. And now you can also pass a where clause into these as a second parameter. So you could do sum age where, age is 21 or something like that. But so that's just what I wanted to show you in this video. There's quite a lot to go over in this video, and some of it can get pretty complicated. So what I actually wanted to do is for the next video, I'm going to take a break from learning new things, and I'm going to set up a challenge problem for you to solve. So this challenge is going to include creating a table, and then inserting specific users into it, and then writing specific queries. I'll give more details on it when I'm actually making that video. So in the beginning of the next video, I'll write out what the challenge will be. And it's just a way to test your knowledge, because I think the best way to learn things is by putting it into practice. But besides that, thank you for watching. If you have any questions on any of this stuff, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments, and I'll get back to you. But I'll see you in the next video.